You've seen pictures of the beautiful multi-million dollar studios with custom acoustic treatment, and maybe you've recorded in a dead silent vocal booth before, which can be a little creepy. But what, if any of that stuff, do you need to make great sounding music in a home studio? That's the question I want to answer for you today. I remember sitting in my cubicle at Sweetwater. I was fresh out of college. I had my audio degree, just got married, got a real job, had a cubicle. And when things got slow, I would head onto the interwebs and go see what was happening in all the audio forums. There were a lot of them. The main one was one called Gear Sluts. I know it's a crass name and they've changed it since, but that was the place where that was the happening place in 2006 if you were online and you were into music production. So I would spend time there just kind of seeing what people were talking about. And there's this phenomenon that I observed. I call it the Gear Sluts anthem because no matter what the question was, the answer would be the same. Whether you were asking, what's the best microphone for vocals? What do you like for studio monitors? How do you record acoustic guitar? The answer was always acoustic treatment. Like literally, someone would say, what's your favorite mic for vocals? And people would say, doesn't matter what mic you use if you don't treat your room. And there was always a little bit of anger there too. It was literally as if I could ask, hey, I've got a rash. What do you think? And they would say, acoustic treatment is the answer. It was almost comical, but they had very strong opinions. So first lesson of the day, be wary of people on the internet with strong opinions. The irony of that statement is I'm a person on the internet and I'm about to give you a strong opinion. But hopefully you've watched some of my videos. Hopefully I've earned your trust over the last 16 years of serving this community. And also at some point, hopefully you've listened to some of my music and you like the quality of the music that I'm making. I'll never forget the first time I was involved in one of these forums. I would try to get in there and answer questions and be a good part of the community. And there would always be people, typically this acoustic treatment crowd, who had very strong opinions and would voice them very loudly. And there's a level of when you hear someone that confident, you tend to believe them, at least at first. They must know what they're talking about. Look how confident they are. But inevitably, they would share a link to a song they just produced, maybe in the signature on the forum. And I would click on it, excited to hear the master at work. And it would be terrible, just terrible. Like maybe someone likes it, but I would listen and say, oh no. The kind of thing like, oh, your guitar's not in tune, like that kind of terrible. So I would start to kind of backtrack in my mind, what advice have I taken from this person? Because if they can't hear that the guitar is out of tune, why would I take their advice on anything else related to using their ears? So I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying that to assure you that you're in the right place. Maybe I'm biased, but I have gotten really good at producing music, and I've developed some strong opinions around how to do that. And typically my opinions go against a lot of the popular advice out there because I'm going for what works versus like what's technically the best on paper. So let's jump in. First, a quick point of clarification. A lot of people use the phrase acoustic treatment and soundproofing interchangeably. They are not the same thing. Soundproofing is creating a room where sound doesn't get in or out of it. So if I had a soundproof room, I could record a gentle acoustic guitar and the microphone wouldn't hear the lawnmower outside. Or vice versa, I could record a really loud guitar amp and the neighbor can't hear it. That's not what we're talking about today. In my opinion, most people don't need soundproofing. Most people are talking about acoustic treatment, not soundproofing. If soundproofing is what you want, typically that has to happen at the construction level. Like you have to build the room to be soundproof. You can't slap a couple things on the wall and expect it to do anything for soundproofing. Just with that out of the way, we're talking specifically about acoustic treatment. So what is acoustic treatment for, and what problem does it solve? Yes, it can look nice, but that can't be the only reason that you use it. Acoustic treatment solves two problems. First, it lets the microphone hear more of the source than the room. It's that simple. Secondly, it lets you hear more speaker than room. So acoustic treatment is just about taking the sound of your room out of the equation as much as possible, so that the microphone really just hears my voice or my guitar and doesn't pick up a whole lot of room. Or so when I'm listening to things on my speakers, I can hear it accurately, So I'm hearing actually what the recording and the mix sounds like, not what it sounds like when it comes out of my speakers, bounces crazily around the room, and then hits my ears. That's what it's all about. Taking the room out of the source material and taking the room out of the sound as you mix your songs. Both are important. Some people say, well, I don't record, I only mix. I don't need acoustic treatment. To that I say, well, that's only half the equation. If you mix on speakers, granted, headphones takes this whole thing out of the equation, but if you have speakers, treatment's going to help, because otherwise you're hearing your speakers plus a whole lot of room. Acoustic treatment will help you hear more of just your speakers. Okay? All right, so first of all, you probably already gathered this from the way I'm talking today, but acoustic treatment is not a magic bullet. You won't go from being terrible at recording to being amazing by putting up some acoustic panels. It's a helpful tool, but it's not a magic bullet. And you should know, you don't need to cover every surface of your room with some sort of foam to achieve acoustic treatment. I'm going to share with you in the next few minutes my go-tos for acoustic treatment in reverse order of importance. So we're going to start with the stuff that I would say is just kind of, it may be helpful, it may not, I don't know. Probably helpful. The second group will be nice to haves, but not maybe critical. And then the third and final group will be the things that are must-haves that I would always make sure I have available to me in my studio. So let's jump in, starting with the least important, and this might ruffle a few feathers, but this is my take, and this is my channel, so I get to say it. So first thing, let's talk about bass traps. I've got some footage here to show you my bass trap. So this is my desk back behind it, and it looks like it's snowing because I've got the flashlight on to show these. But these are my bass traps. I had someone build them for me a decade or more ago. It's just, I think 1x4s maybe. I'm not a construction guy, but they're very long. They're about 8 feet long. They're covered with just like a bed sheet material, and they're filled with some sort of insulation. Probably the one they recommend is the Owens Corning 703, I believe, on the inside. So they're a good 4 inches thick, and there's a big old frame, and they sit in this bottom corner of my room. When I originally had these built, they actually were meant to go vertical in the corners of the space I was in at the time, so they're at the exact height of that ceiling. I moved out of that place. I don't have any vertical corners in this room because everything's sloped because it's above a garage. So I just put these behind my desk up against the wall, and the idea is you can lean guitars against them. The idea here is they create like a triangle of space, and bass frequencies go in there and they don't come out, or at least they don't come out as much. One of the problems in your room is, depending on the dimensions of the room, certain frequencies will build up and cut down. That's part of what acoustic treatment is trying to do, is just make the room be less obnoxious, mess with the sound not as much. And so bass traps theoretically will help with the low frequencies. The idea, I've been in spaces where without bass traps we could hear the bass okay, and with bass traps we could hear the bass more, which sounds backwards, but really what we're doing is preventing the room from EQing the sound. Now, have I A-B'd sitting here in this position with these bass traps and without them? No, because that sounds boring. Also, when I listen and then I go move them and come back and listen, I'm going to be in a different headspace. I'm not going to really be able to accurately tell, and I'm not going to get a measurement microphone and measure things because that's even more boring. So I had them built because it seemed like a good idea, and now I schlep them back behind the desk and I don't think about them ever again. So they definitely fall into the category of probably helpful, but if I had to spend money to do it again, I don't know if I would, because I don't know if it's making much of a difference. By the way, you may have noticed, I'm not going to give you a bunch of technical stuff because the technical stuff, for the most part, doesn't matter. If you're an acoustic treatment creator and you're selling treatment to people, sure, you should probably know all the technical stuff. But if you're just making music, I'm going to talk to you like a boy from Mississippi that I am. So the second item in the category of probably helpful, but you could probably do without, are monitor isolation pads. This is what monitor isolation pads look like. You take your studio monitors and you put them on top of these foam dealy bobs. I used RLX for a long time. They're Mopads. These are from Editor's Keys. It's the same idea. It's just a thick foam. And the concept is it decouples the monitors from the surface so they don't resonate with the desk and cause more frequencies than just what you want coming out of the speaker. There are a lot of people who will say this does nothing. There are people who say you got to use a really big, massive monitor stand to really get any benefit. I will say the first time I used these 15 years ago, longer than that, 20 years ago, I had some cheap little monitors, 5-inch monitors. I bought a set of these for $40. I put them under the monitors, and I immediately heard more low end. So that could have just been me on that day, but I felt like the bass tightened up when I put them under there. So I've used them ever since. That's all I need. It's just to hear it a little bit and then use them ever since. I know people who don't use them and get great mixes. By the way, you'll find people who are exceptions to every rule that you'll ever hear. People who make incredible mixes on Apple AirPods probably. So take all of this with a grain of salt. But those are my two, bass traps and these monitor isolation pads. I could go either way. I think they're helpful. I'll continue to use them because I have them. Not sure if I'd buy them again. Let's transition into group 2. These are the nice to haves. I wouldn't say I absolutely have to have these, but I'm really glad I do. And the first is wall treatment. So this is what you think about when you think about acoustic treatment. You think typically, a buddy of mine just texted me the other day, said, hey, I need to do some acoustic treatment. What do you recommend to put on the walls? That's kind of what we think about. We put things on the walls. Typically, we're thinking about foam. For me, wall treatment is helpful, not the most important thing, but it can help just kind of chill the room out a little bit. So here's what some of my wall treatment looks like. So this is back behind my desk, and I've got this section of bare wall treated with 3 panels. These are similar. The same guy made them. They're smaller and not quite as thick, but the idea is they're light enough to hang on the wall, but you're able to take them and move them around. So I'll put it like this when I'm doing like an acoustic guitar session. So I'll stick the guitar player back here between a few of these, so it's just a nice tight sounding space. The microphone is picking up mostly the guitar. The rest of the room, even though it's a pretty big room, doesn't really come into play because we're in this nice little nook with panels on the side creating a nice isolated sound. That's all you need. You don't need a full-on ISO booth to get a good guitar recording. If you've listened to an acoustic guitar recording of mine and thought, wow, that sounds good, this is it. I've never had an ISO booth, and I've been just fine without it. The second nice to have is carpet. Every studio I've been in, I've either had carpet in the studio or I've put down a bunch of rugs because a solid floor, as beautiful as hardwood flooring can be, it creates a whole lot of echo in the room and you start hearing it a lot. If you send me a mix of your song and you're in a room with bare walls and a bare floor, I'm going to be able to tell. Because as soon as you hit that vocal with a little bit of compression, just the vocal, if nothing else, I'm going to hear that room coming in. Is that always the case? Depending on if you have the next thing I'm going to share with you, it may not be a big deal. But I like the idea of the carpet just doing general absorption of mostly high frequencies, but it makes the room not be so echoey. So then I can kind of start from a better place than if I had bare surfaces on every wall and floor. Wall treatment is my nice to have. My 2 must-haves, we got to start with carpet. Every studio I've had has had carpet on the floors, and I've moved a lot, by the way. If I don't have carpet, I'll put down rugs, typically multiple rugs. The idea is hardwood floors are beautiful, but the room gets really reverberant, and I don't need that. I don't want my studio to have an echo to it. I want it to be just chill. I don't need it to be dead silent like a vocal booth, but I don't want things echoing around either. The best example of this is if you've got a big room with bare floors and bare walls and you record a vocal, I'm going to hear that in your mix. Especially once you compress the vocal, that's going to bring out that room sound even more, and there's not much you can do about it. So having a good step in that right direction, wall treatment helps a little bit, carpet helps a whole lot. So put down carpet, put down rugs, whatever you can. The room doesn't need to be dead, but it does need to not be echoey, and carpet goes a long way towards helping that. And then finally, my favorite thing, if you told me I could only have one thing for my studio as far as acoustic treatment, this would be it, hands down, all day, every day, and it's this. So this is my space, and you'll notice to the left and to the right are my beloved gobos. Why they're called gobos, I don't know, but they're just big, thick 2x4 frames. That one doesn't have casters anymore because it broke, but the other one does. It's just a 2x4 frame with a whole bunch of insulation wrapped in, I think, a bed sheet. Again, I hired somebody to do this. And then they've got casters on the bottom so you can roll them around. So for me, this is the ultimate piece of acoustic treatment because it can serve multiple purposes. Most of the time, I'm sitting my butt in this seat, and I need one of the best places you can put acoustic treatment, if we're talking wall treatment or gobos, is immediately to the left and right of your studio monitors, just somewhere between your monitors and the wall, because that's the first place, one of the first places you're going to hear a lot of reflections, and it's going to make you not be able to hear your monitors as well. The first time when I had an apartment in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I had some speakers, I'd put the monitor pads on, and that helped a little bit, but when I put some treatment on the side walls to the left and the right of the mix position, my mixes went from sounding like this to sounding like this. It helped them sound wider because I didn't have as much of the room coming into my ears, especially those early reflections. A little bit of foam on the walls isn't going to do anything for low frequencies or even mid frequencies, but these big old thick gobos do quite a bit. So when I'm here, I've got these things to my left and my right at all times. What do? They deaden a huge chunk of the sound that's both coming out of my mouth, so my voice doesn't bounce around the room too much, and coming out of the speakers. It's dual duty. So I'll do a lot of my recording in this position. I'll set up my microphone and just record vocals. I might stand up. They're tall enough to where they're still taller than me. They're about 7 feet tall. So I will sing my vocal in between these two. If I'm recording guitar, I'll sometimes record it right here because it creates this quiet space in the room where I can record something beautiful. And if I need to record something over there, I will get them out, wheel them around, move them around to put them in the correct position. If I have someone coming over to record vocals, for example, I might move them over there to that corner so they've got themselves a little bit of just a vibey space to place the microphone where they're enclosed. And then the sound of their voice is mostly staying inside that little booth of sorts. It's coming out into the room a little bit, but because those panels are so thick, they're absorbing sound on the front end, and then they're preventing sound from coming in on the back end. Is it soundproofing? No. Is it a vocal booth? No. Does it sound good? Absolutely. Again, if you've listened to any, like for example, acoustic guitars that I've recorded, go listen to my EP called Rain. I recorded it with a pair of Earthworks mics, which that helps, J45 Gibson acoustic guitar, and then these gobos kind of surrounding me. So I'm here, and then they're kind of here and here in like a V shape, and I'm in this little bubble of beautiful sound. Works wonderfully. You don't have to, if you can't build them yourself, there are companies that make them. I went to a client's house recently. He had a couple of dividers, looked like it was from like a cubicle. A cubicle wall could work really well for this too. It's just the idea of something to the left and the right of the mix position that stays there most of the time and then moves to wherever you need them when you're recording. So they help you with mixing because they're making your monitors more accurate, and they're helping with recording because they're taking the room out of the recording. It's glorious. So when you get the acoustic treatment right in your room, you can be more confident in what you're hearing. You know that what you're hearing is accurate, and you can be more confident that when you play that mix somewhere else, it's going to be more accurate because you were hearing it accurately in your room. And then people out there who experience your music, they're going to hear more music and less room when they listen to your work. By the way, speaking of mixing, people tend to overcomplicate mixing. They make it about 1,000 different things when it's really only about a handful of things. And one of those things is balance. If you get balance right, you can get a killer mix on $80 headphones. Without balance, a $40,000 custom-built studio won't help you. You still won't be able to get a good mix. If you want to learn more, come join my Speed Mixing Challenge, where you'll learn not only how to get incredible sounding mixes, but how to get them faster than you thought possible. It's starting soon. Grab your ticket now at speedmixingchallenge.com. All right, that's it for this video. Hope it was helpful for you. Leave a comment below if you have any questions. And if you haven't seen this video, 19 mixing tips I wish I knew earlier in my career, check that out now.